1956. It actually flew 2 years after the prototype English Electric Lightning and then waited 2 years before the Phantom. A wonderful 63 years ago. Yes, quite incredible. This time. Intended to have very high very reminiscent of the age of the aircraft. If you can ignore the delta wing, it's a very, very similar shape to the English Electric Lightning. One of the characteristics so common to both in design terms, the shock cone in the nose. Yes, aerodynamically it slows the air down to subsonic speed as it goes over the first stage of the compressor blades, but quite a useful place to put the radar. Produced from 1954 onwards, had a variety of configurations. They eventually settled on this delta wing. The first series production Mig-21s took to the air in 1956, and the aircraft was given the NATO code name of Fishbed. Again, when you compare that to another aircraft of that era, the F4, only a dozen nations ever flew that aircraft. Yeah, these aircraft were used right across the Warsaw Pact and the Soviet sphere of influence. The Mig-21F model entered Soviet state testing in April 1959. It had completed it that November. And the F-13 model, the Fishbed C as it was known to NATO, was the first. Aerial successes against US Air Force aircraft, in these hands. India Mig-21 scored 8 aerial kills in 1971's conflict with India and Pakistan, 4 of them against America. Although unit cost is not always a good way of determining affordability, but in 1974 the Mig-21 cost £2 million per unit, and again when you compare that to another aircraft of that era, the F4 was at 8 million, 4 times as expensive. So for the non-Soviet nations that actually had a choice of which aircraft to procure, you can see why this is such a prolific type. Shot down both recent long ago, about 10 years later, they started a big upgrade program aiming to increase the NATO compatibility of these aircraft with a view to joining the NATO alliance. It's known as Israeli company Elbit joined forces with Romanian firm Aerostar, and the first upgraded aircraft flew in August 1995. They updated 110 aeroplanes in 3 versions: the LanceA for air-to-ground, the B as a 2-seat trainer, and the C for the air-to-air role. The A has now been retired, and so these C models have taken on the air-to-ground as well as the air-to-air role. So a good comparison in terms of the manoeuvrability that you talked about between this and the newer designs. The FAT conducting a square loop inside of 3,000 feet, so this aircraft using pretty much 6,000 feet for most of its looping manoeuvres. And that characteristic slam as the afterburner engages, so typical of so many of the generation of jet engines of the Tumansky R25 of the MiG. But equally one of the very good features of those engines where you had virtually instant reheat. A lot of Western engines take about 5 or 6 seconds to spool up from dry power to full reheat. This is spooled up in about 3 seconds, so a very good design feature of it. These aircraft have got some pretty modern kit on them, these LanceRs of the Romanian Air Force. They've got head-up displays, colour multifunction displays in the cockpit, new radar warning receiver for self-protection, a transponder that's compatible with NATO. You wouldn't expect it to be found in something as old as the Mig-21. And another feature of that delta wing is an incredibly, or relatively, high-speed landing. The aircraft coming over the hedge at about 160 knots in comparison with the 130 knots that the F-18 would have made its approach at. 2 squadrons of Mig-21 LanceRs still operational in the Romanian Air Force. This one comes from the 861 at Mikhail Podgornicianu Air Base at Constanța on Romania's southeastern Black Sea coast. The end design for these airplanes, the first Romanian F-16 squadron, started getting fighting forces export these aircraft in September 2016. Nonetheless, there's still a role for the Mig-21 at the moment. In air combat, it's a small target, difficult for even modern weapon systems to acquire, and of course it's fast moving, so they can make quickly run attacks, though range is an issue. Colonel Stancu Georga at the controls of the Romanian Air Force Mig-21 LanceR C. What a privilege to see that aircraft back to. Well, the last of the day's aerobatic teams, and there will still be 2 items to go after this. And another civilian team of the very highest quality. 6 Aero L-39C Albatros jet trainers over from Dijon in France. And they form the Breitling jet team.